GERO 200.
Hi.
Today is April 3rd, Sunday, and we're doing this week's video lecture.
2022.
Yes, and since I'm an attorney, I'm going to handle the legal issues that we're going to deal with over the next couple of weeks. So I've been looking forward to it. And for those of you celebrating Ramadan, I want to wish you Ramadan Mubarak and wishing you all the blessings of the holy month. And let's get started. So let's go into the CT1, CT2 instructions. That is due on Wednesday. So by the end of the day, as usual, if you have any trouble turning it in, you can email it to me and I will upload it for you. So don't worry. Send it to me before the deadline so I know you got it done. And John made a video and uploaded a video to walk you through. We also have a slide deck to walk you through. And this is just
Where's
to give
the video?
you...
I got to put it in here.
It's okay. It's also posted on the announcements,
right.
But he'll put it in later as soon as we're done here. So scroll down. We make our rubrics pretty simple because we want you to just be able to go and look and see, okay, have I checked the box on everything I'm supposed to put into it? And basically, you're going to collect information about, your investments if you were to invest in an IRA, an individual retirement account, your investments if you were to invest in a 401k, which is an employer retirement account. You're going to talk about compound interest and the benefit of compound interest. You're going to talk about the benefit of employer matching funds and how that impacts your outcome. You're going to talk about, employment, the importance of 401ks, how we generally have a very poor participation rate in the U.S., which is concerning, I think, for a lot of us, that we're going to have a lot of older people who are living in poverty in the future. And then you're going to include screenshots of the graphs that you create by going into those online calculators. Some people ask, do I have to include that long it's like 2 pages long of the actual numbers. You can if you want to, but you don't have to.
Yeah, that's just there to kind of visually see. Oh my God, look at how the money is compounding. So
yeah, and we're not strict about page length. If you want to go over, that's fine. Just make sure you hit all the
And do remember for the IRA, you just as I showed in my video, you want 2 scenarios. Okay. So one could be where you're putting in 5% of your salary and the company you work for matches it 1-to-1.
No, IRAs don't have matching.
I meant to say 401k. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. That's why she's here. Okay. And then also, don't forget the limits that we talked about that the federal government has put in terms of these two, and that's all in the reading as well.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes. So the IRS, our tax authority in the U.S., sets maximum amounts that you can contribute. So we want you to follow those maximum amounts so that you get a real world view of how much money you could save using either one of these two strategies, the IRA or the 401k.
And I got to put the video in here. I already sent it out. So if you go back and you look at the announcements, I sent out the video. That was a how-to. But again, the slide deck is pretty.
It's the first announcement.
The slide deck is pretty straightforward. All right. So here's my video explaining CT2 right there. All right.
Okay.
So that's how you go about that. All right.
Okay. So let's go into this week's the weekly assignments, and we'll go into our weekly assignment folder. Scrolling down.
Again, you should feel proud. Look at all the different areas you guys are now exposed to and kind of mini experts in as well. So it's pretty cool.
We're on week 13, right, so that's opening here tomorrow and due next Monday.
That's right there. Right.
So it is a busy week because you've got that CT2 due as well.
And this video is going right here. So
okay. So what we have is a short reading about durable power of attorney for healthcare. And this week I have spent a couple days working, helping a friend of mine who was diagnosed with frontotemporal lobe dementia a few years ago. She's my age. We were good friends dating back to law school, went to law school together. And she's now facing this really sad diagnosis when her husband found out he left her. So she's alone. And she's luckily has her friends from law school that were rallying and trying to help her. And she wanted to put together an advanced directive that specifically spoke to the issues that come up with dementia, which is becoming more and more common that people who have been diagnosed with dementia want to take that extra step.
Do you want me to open the file then?
Yeah. So
and don't forget, guys, what I always, and Julie's going to go over, these kind of highlights that really kind of will solidify this concept. open your quiz, all right? Don't forget, always open your quiz first, and then go through the reading, and that's the best strategy. All right,
Yeah,
so let's
so
go.
this is a short thing about advanced directives. See if we can
It's
open.
coming up.
Okay,
Mhm.
all righty. From the US government. So from the National Institute on Aging. Now, one thing I like to remind people, we should all have advanced directives. If you are 18, you need an advanced directive. You probably don't have one. If you are my age, you heck yeah need an advanced directive. And recently during the COVID pandemic, we updated our advanced directives. I put one together for both of my sons. So all four of us have advanced directives now. And we updated the people that we named to make decisions for us because our older son is 26 now, our younger son is 20. And so we made them number one, number two, and then John's brother, who's in his 70s, is number three. And so the process of putting together an advanced directive in terms of making these decisions, talking to your family members, deciding what you're going to do when, if you are unable to make your own healthcare decisions, is scary for a lot of people. But you don't need a lawyer to do it. There are free advanced directives online. Most states will provide it. So if you just go into Google and say advanced directive in the name of your state that you live in, then you can pull up a free advanced directive. There's also some websites I'll mention at the end that are great resources. So you just want to make sure you get one that works for your state because there are some little tiny wrinkles and some states have extra requirements. So you don't want to have something that isn't enforceable. So basically what an advanced directive for healthcare is, it says one or two things. You can have a living will that says, this is what I want to be done if I'm sick and at the end of my life. I do want CPR, I don't want CPR. I do want nutrition and hydration, I don't want nutrition and hydration, etc. An advanced directive, healthcare power of attorney, names someone to make decisions for you. So John has been named as my decision maker, my primary decision maker, and then my sons are second, third, and I guess his brother's fourth. So I'm a lawyer. I believe in layers. You want to have someone, you want to have a backup plan. So you name that person to be your agent. And the things that you have to think about is if I'm near death or if I have a terminal illness, do I want CPR or not? On TV, when they do CPR, it works 100% of the time. In real life, if you are a cancer patient, an elderly person, someone with significant health issues, CPR has probably less than a 5% chance of working. I always say this to my students, for young, healthy people like my students, if you drop to the floor in my classroom, yes, I'm going to do CPR on you because you are in that category of young, healthy people. It's probably going to work for you. It's probably going to bring you back. It's going to be a great thing. But it's good to talk to your doctor. Should CPR be used on me in my individual circumstances? Do you want to be placed on a ventilator? Pre-pandemic, I think a lot of people would have said absolutely no ventilator use. Now we've been through the COVID pandemic, and sometimes people need to be placed on a ventilator for a short period of time and then they're able to recover. The reality is, once you're on a ventilator when you have COVID, you're in very serious condition and you may not ever come off the ventilator. Do you want artificial nutrition and hydration? This is an emotional issue, and sometimes I joke and say, yeah, heck yeah, I want food and water right up till the very end. However, if you are in a terminal condition, getting artificial nutrition hydration may delay your death unnecessarily, and it may increase your discomfort. When John's mom was towards the end of her life, her hospice caregivers said to us, her hospice care team told us, let's not give her any fluids because she's bedridden. She was basically, a few days before she passed, she had gone into a coma, and we were taking care of her at home. And giving her those fluids would have meant those fluids would have just sat in her lungs and made it difficult for her to breathe. So it would
She
have just,
was unaware
yeah.
of the discomfort, so it was a win-win. The other thing that the hospice worker will do is if there is discomfort, then you give medicine to reduce the discomfort, and these are different types of opioids, and again, it will accelerate the process where the person will pass comfortably. So.
Yeah, so the last issue is comfort care. And so for people who are close to the end, they might have difficulty breathing. So they might be given some sort of breathing treatment through a nebulizer, an inhaler, or something like that. they might have pain. So they might be given morphine or other types of opioids. And of course, if someone is very near the end, you're going to probably give it orally as opposed to a shot or a pill or something like that. And some people become anxious or distressed, so you might be giving the patient, or the patient might need some sort of anti-anxiety medication. So most people will say yes, give me comfort care, and that can include things like wiping their lips or moistening their tongue or something like that. So
And Julie was talking about, how we all should have it, you guys should have it, and it's become this kind of moral and ethical stand. Let's say you were driving to Vegas and you got a horrible auto accident. You're 22 years of age. You're completely brain dead, but we can keep you going. So this is where this comes in handy, where your agent can come in there with the legal document and say, look, this was the patient can't communicate, but these are the wishes, and this is how we're going to head. So.
Yeah, and some of this culture of advanced directives is a little bit unique to the US. A lot of other cultures don't do this. We're starting to see it become more and more common as we see an aging population around the world. So South Korea launched a pilot program with advanced directives not too long ago. And so we're seeing this more and more in other countries, not just in the US. So I want to talk a little bit about hospice care and palliative care. Hospice care is intended for people who are terminal and are expected to die within 6 months. It's a wonderful, wonderful supportive treatment. It's paid for by Medicare or insurance if you're too young to be on Medicare. And you will have a whole team, doctors, social workers, nurses, nurse assistants that will come and provide you with medication, with pain meds, support for your family, advice for your family on how to deal with this. And they basically want to make you comfortable while you're progressing towards death and the final stages of your life. Now, palliative care is a totally different thing. So you could have metastatic breast cancer, and your life expectancy might be many, many years and potentially forever, because between now and 10 years from now, we could come up with a good treatment or a cure for metastatic breast cancer. So palliative care is something that will provide comfort care for you. So let's say you're having difficult symptoms as a result of whatever your condition is. Maybe you're having difficulty breathing. And so this palliative care treatment would focus on what can we do to make your breathing more comfortable. My dad has COPD, so he's got a lot of trouble breathing and he's on oxygen. So he would be a good candidate for palliative care to deal with some of the issues that surround his oxygen dependence, exacerbation episodes where he gets sick or gets a respiratory infection or something like that. So you could have palliative care for 50 years. You might be a young person with a chronic illness that needs palliative care to help manage your symptoms. Hospice care is only at the end of life. And so sometimes people hear a doctor says to a patient, hey, have you thought about palliative care? And the patient freaks out because they think, oh, that means I'm terminal. No, it doesn't mean you're terminal. It just means you may have symptoms that you need help managing.
And like I said right here, it could be really uncomfortable from the chemotherapy you're receiving for your cancer. So with this information, then the doctor can step up and take steps to reduce the discomfort.
Yeah, hospice is relatively underutilized, and we see that most people get referred to hospice within a week or two before their death. We actually find with research that people who go on hospice live longer than people who don't go on hospice. So weirdly, there's something about hospice and the support that you get through hospice that allows people to live longer with a better quality of life. Okay, so think about what you want, communicate with the people who might need to make decisions for you. And like I said, with an advanced directive, I've said that John can make decisions for me before the end of my life. So if I get into a car accident and I'm unconscious, John can go to the hospital with a copy of my advance directive and he can say, well, yes, she would want that surgery, or no, she wouldn't want that surgery. And yes, she would want this treatment, or she wouldn't want that treatment. And he and I have had a lot of discussions about, what I would want or what I wouldn't want. And especially because I'm a cancer patient, when I was first diagnosed, I was like, hey, we need to have some conversations about what I view as important to me when, if, a well, we all die, but if I'm really sick and I can't make decisions for myself, these are the things that are important to me. And so it's hard to have those conversations with your family members. It's easier when you're my age, and I've had family members who were sick, and I've had family members die, and so I've kind of been through the drill. And the people I'm usually talking to about this stuff are older than me, so we all can kind of understand it. It's a little more difficult, I think, the younger you are, the less experience you have with these issues, and you might feel reluctant to approach your parents or your older family members and say, hey, do you have a living will or a durable power of attorney for healthcare? Do you want to set something up? But it is so valuable and so important to have these conversations and figure out what's important to people. When my mom passed away, she passed away suddenly, but she and I had had a lot of conversations about what she would have wanted and how she wanted her funeral to be, and what was important to her. So I had a lot of peace of mind in the sense that I knew what she wanted. I knew how to carry out her wishes. And that was really a blessing during a really hard time because she and I were really close. So if you sign a durable power of attorney for healthcare, you name someone as your agent. So just like you hire a real estate agent when you want to buy a house in the United States, you name someone your healthcare agent. So I named John to make decisions for me, and he makes the decisions for me. He could make decisions for me now because I signed the document so that it went into effect immediately. Or I could have signed a document that said, oh no, you can only make decisions for me once I am incompetent and I can't make my own decisions. So it's really important to make sure you communicate your needs to your healthcare proxy or your healthcare agent. And a lot of times these documents have a combination of a living will and a healthcare power of attorney. Living will talks about what you want end of life care. Do I want CPR? Do I want to be on a ventilator? Do I want comfort care, et cetera? And then, the power of attorney says, hey, you can make decisions for me like, do I get my teeth cleaned this week? Do I get hearing aids? Things like that, things that are kind of way before the end of your life.
And you see here the will's all laid out in writing. It's this document, and then the other document, the durable power of attorney, is just that agreeing that we've had the conversation and that I am going to make decisions that are in her best interest.
Yes. Now there's a couple other documents. One is a do not resuscitate order. So oftentimes, if you're 18, you need a durable power of attorney for healthcare. If you get diagnosed with a serious illness, you might want to think about, getting a do not resuscitate order so that I can say, hey, if the paramedics come to my house and my heart stopped, well, I'm sick and I'm not expected to recover. So don't take heroic measures to bring me back. The other document that's becoming more popular, it's not available in every state, but it's called a POLST, a physician order for life-sustaining treatment, and you have more choices. So you can say, I do want CPR, but I don't want to be on a ventilator. I do want comfort care. I don't want nutrition and hydration. And so it's a little more detailed than a do not resuscitate order. But yes, you can also have a POLST that would cover some other issues as well. So who do you want to be your agent? You want someone who's going to respect your wishes. You want someone who's going to who understands your priorities. It could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be someone, a neighbor. It's just important to have someone named. And you can also limit the types of decisions that they would make. In my case, I gave John absolute authority to make any decision he wants to make. But you could also say, well, I only want this person to make decisions about surgery or chemotherapy or something like that. So make sure when you create this document, typically you either have to have it notarized or signed by two witnesses, because we want to make sure that if you're saying these are your wishes, we want to make sure that you are the person you say you are and that your signature is valid. So just make sure that it's signed by valid witnesses. The witnesses have to be over 18. Every state has different rules about whether they can be a beneficiary under your will or not, whether they can be an employee of your doctor or not. You want to make sure that there's someone, for example, in our case, we use two neighbors down the street. They don't have any financial interest in our estate. They're not related to us. They won't benefit if we die. So they're considered kind of neutral third parties that are reliable to make as witnesses.
And this is the discussion of the pulse that Julia was talking about, and there's another one right here that's similar. So.
Okay, so once you have your document, what are you going to do with it? You are not going to put it in a drawer and forget about it. You're going to give a copy of the document to the people who need to know about it. So I gave copies of my document to my sons. We have a little binder in our office, so John has access to it, I have access to it. And more commonly in more and more jurisdictions, there are online registries where you can put your document online. I don't think the healthcare establishment is caught up to that. So you may have put your document online and your doctor may have no idea how to go in and find it. But when John's mom was towards the end of her life, we had a copy of her durable power of attorney for healthcare. We had copies in both cars so that if an emergency happened during the day and we had to run out to the hospital, we'd have that document with us. So that's a good thing to do.
And these things are not without conflict, so even though you've been given decision maker, being given the right to be the decision maker or proxy, we had that one experience when my dad was passing, that this one person stepped in and tried to take over, and it was really awkward and it kind of delayed what we wanted to do, but we ended up doing it anyway. So it's a big responsibility, and there's a lot of discussion that has to occur. So.
Yeah, and for that reason, as a lawyer, I do not recommend making two people co-proxies or co-agents because you need a tie-breaking vote. So just make one person. If that person can't serve for some reason, maybe you've put together your document now and 10 years from now that person lives far away or they have a complicated life or maybe you're not that close anymore, then you have a second person listed and a third person listed, so you've got backups. And you can have this card in your wallet that says I have an advanced directive and these are the people who have it. So scroll down. So there's some really great resources here. Caringinfo.org is a great website. The American Bar Association has a toolkit for consumers who want to do healthcare advanced directives. And so those are probably the two best places. There's a Pulse website. You can go to Pulse California or Pulse for your state. Not every state has Pulse yet. Oftentimes, if you have a do not resuscitate order, and you're very elderly and you're living at home, you might want to they have officially endorsed necklaces or bracelets that you can get that would say, it would be a medical bracelet that says, I have a do not resuscitate order and, a little bit of information about it so that you'd have it on your arm or around your neck in the event that your heart stops and the people who come to help you are doing their best and they don't know what's going on. That would help them out a lot.
Back to Blackboard.
All right. Well, let's talk about the discussion. Oh yeah, before I forget. In the US, we have a unique culture that really prizes individualism and independence and especially with older people, giving them the freedom to decide for themselves. So we put a premium on that. That is a contrast to a lot of other countries around the world where when your family member gets sick, if you live in China, for example, it's a lot more common for the family members to deal with the doctor, the family members to make the decision about treatments. And sometimes in a lot of cultures, it's not considered appropriate to burden the elderly person with the diagnosis. So they don't even necessarily know that they have cancer. They don't know that they're terminal. And so, but in the US, we're very pro, hey, let's keep our old people independent and let's give them the right to make decisions for themselves. So we always are as a policy issue, that's the backdrop to these decisions, maintaining that respect for that individual and maintaining that willingness to listen to what they want and give them the information that they need to make choices as long as they're able to make their own choices.
And there's power in knowledge and power in information, and that's what that person will use, but you'll also be working with the healthcare team because oftentimes you're going to have to be dealing with capacity when you're dealing with a person who's demented. And, and when you talk about capacity and decision making, are they making proper decisions or has their brain deteriorated to the point that they're not? So.
Okay, so let's talk about the discussion. We're talking about diversity and diversity in long-term care in this discussion. And there's so many different types of diversity. There's diversity in terms of ethnicity, language, religion, geographic area, socioeconomic status, whether you're a member or identify with the LGBTQ plus community. And so we have all these possible different communities that might end up in a long-term care facility together. And the challenge to provide really good quality long-term care is to find a way to respect and appreciate the diversity and educate yourself about the different populations so that you're responding to their needs and making sure that they're getting what they need. So the APA website we refer to first has some good information, and there's a page or two at the beginning. If you are interested, you can dig a little deeper. So they talk about a couple things that are kind of interesting. In the US, we're seeing a big increase in our Hispanic Latino population, so that by 2050, about 30% of our older population will be Hispanic or Latino. Even now, it's the largest racial or ethnic minority group in terms of older people. So we got to figure this out. We've got to understand what are the needs. Now, my caution is that we should never make the mistake of thinking that Hispanic Latinos are a monolithic group, that everybody feels the same way, that everybody talks the same way, that everybody has the same values. It's the same thing with our Asian population, which is also growing in the US. We can't just say, oh, you're Asian, you automatically feel a certain way, or you automatically value certain things. So we've got to really approach people as individuals and really educate ourselves about the ins and outs of the communities that we're dealing with to make sure that we can support them.
Ask them what they're interested in, ask them what they like, and then you tailor it to the individual in that way, for sure.
So this APA website, if you want to go into more detail, go down. Okay. So they have more, go down. So they have more online resources. And so they talk about really important issues like racial related stress for our Black population in the US. If you've been a victim of race discrimination your entire life, and now you're 80 years old and you're disabled and you've got health issues and you're in long-term care, the people who are taking care of you need to appreciate that and understand that and understand that maybe you're going to not trust the healthcare system. Maybe you're going to be worried about whether your caregivers are going to treat you fairly and things like that.
These are the resources. Sorry, my internet was going.
Yeah. So there's great issues there in terms of that. There's great issues, great resources about the LGBTQ plus community in terms of, what are the challenges that they face. Historically, I think things are getting better now. But historically, we saw that a lot of LGBTQ plus people were single and didn't have kids at the end of their lives. Now, of course, I think that's changing. We're seeing more marriages and more people having kids in other ways.
There used to be huge issues in terms of asset transfer and beneficiaries, and huge issues in terms of healthcare. And all these, whether there be transfer and access to healthcare when you're a spouse in one of those type of relationships. So luckily that kind of got worked out in the state of California.
Yeah,
but other states not so much.
And then, of course, in one of my other classes that I teach to graduate students, we talk about housing for the elderly. And one of the cases I talk about was a case that was brought by Lambda Legal, which is a very prominent nonprofit legal advocacy organization. And they brought this case on behalf of an elderly lesbian woman who lost her home because she wasn't married to her long-term partner, and the family came in and grabbed the home when the partner died. Then she moved into senior housing, and once the other residents and employees found out that she was lesbian, they began harassing her and treating her very, very badly. So they brought a lawsuit, and the upshot of the lawsuit, they got a court decision that said, hey, this is discrimination. You can't do that. That's discrimination in housing. So we need to be sensitive and aware of the fact that some of our patients are going to come into our long-term care facilities, and they're going to be worried about stuff like that. We need to think about differences in caregiving across cultures in terms of family caregiving. I hate to say it, but the US, we have evolved into a society where people live far away from their families. And so we don't have these close multi-generational homes as much as we used to. Back in the old days, when my mom grew up, her grandmother lived in a little house that was at the bottom of the hill from her parents' house. And she would go down and spend the night with her grandmother to take care of her when she was older. But now, my mom, before she passed away, lived in New Orleans. I live here. You know, we're far away. It's hard to do things over the phone. And so our family caregiving isn't as robust as we'd like it to be in the US.
In terms of business development, though, this is a growth industry. It is what it is, guys. We are living longer. There's more of us. We're part of the baby boom generation. And so, you can target people that have lots of financial resources and create a really amazing assisted living type facility. Over 55 facilities, all these types of facilities that tailor to the culture of that community. So you could set up shop and have a unique one down here in San Clemente, so all the old surfers can go hang out there, and then you can go over in the east side of LA in Monterey Park and Alhambra and tailor it more to the different communities that are from Chinese ancestry or descent. So
yeah. And that brings up the last issue in terms of diversity. Think about language. So you may have a facility operate a long-term care facility in California because we're a pretty diverse state. You might have 15 different languages represented among the residents. So you've got to think, am I going to hire staff that speak the languages? How are these people going to communicate? Are there going to be barriers to healthcare and barriers to long-term care because the person doesn't speak English or doesn't speak English that well? So we got to be really thinking about these issues. Now, we have 2 videos that talk about cultural diversity in aging care and aging well, that both will give you some ideas about how to approach diversity and how to embrace it and kind of celebrate it. And so I want you to, in terms of the discussion, go in and think about how would you approach the diverse patient population in long-term care? How do you set up your long-term care facility? If it's in an area, it could be a rural area, it could be an urban area, it could be an area where the population is homogeneous, it could be an area where the population is very diverse. How would you do this? How would your strategy change in different areas? And what do you think would be good or best practices? So be creative. Think about what you would want if you're in a long-term care facility and you want people to appreciate your culture and the things that are important to you. So you can talk about food and holidays and language and religion and decorations and parties and just, all the things that might be important.
You got to be creative. A lot of you guys are in Marshall students in real estate development, for example. I think the new wave is multi-generational housing. We're teaching this Blue Zone class over the summer that hopefully you guys can come join us next year when we go to Costa Rica. And one of the key concepts of all the Blue Zones is it's not just your genetic family, but it's this logical family of the community. And in Japan, they call them moais. They have the same thing in Sardinia. They have the same thing in Costa Rica, where if the immediate genetic relative can't help, then the community steps in and helps. So think about that when you're developing your plan.
Okay. Cool. So that's all I have.
All right. Peace, guys. Almost to the end. You guys are doing really well. We totally appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Next week.
I'm trying to stop it. Can you say stop? Stop.
Bye.